Hello and welcome. This is Not Just Making the Tea, the podcast which discusses the realities of our career and life choices whilst made at school and college. It celebrates the parts that haven't gone to plan as much as those which have. With every chat, we plan to explore what life skills there are to be learnt and how they can influence and help us to succeed. I'm your host, Rachel Price, founder of Amali.com, the career website for young adults. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for taking the time out to listen to the podcast. I hope that you enjoy the experience and that you will continue to join me and my future guests on our journey. I really appreciate anyone who takes the time to listen, so please do subscribe and comment. I hope that you'll find these chats entertaining, thought-provoking, and hopefully they'll give you some positive vibes for your day. So on that note, let's get started with today's topic: developing successful learning strategies. Learning new information or skills can be very challenging, but having the right strategies at your disposal can make it a lot simpler. Most people will assume that in order to memorise something, you need to repeat it just several times. This is generally true, but to get the most from this technique, you must space your learning out over days or weeks rather than hours. Give yourself enough time to forget the information before going over it again. This is called spaced repetition. When you return to the material after a break, you have to relearn it. This means that it gets transferred from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. For example, if you need to study for a test, study the materials every couple of days for a couple of weeks, rather than cramming the night before. When you practice a skill or go over some material, practice other things at the same time. This strategy is known as interleaving. For example, if you want to learn how to use the past tense in French, don't do lots of consecutive past tense exercises when you study. It would be better to intersperse these exercises with questions on other topics. This does make studying harder because you have to switch between two different skill sets, but this method forces you to relearn materials over and over again, a bit like spaced repetition, but on a smaller scale. You will definitely make more mistakes to start with, but by correcting these mistakes, you will help yourself to remember more in the long term, and you'll have developed your new understanding and knowledge. In summary, I suggest that you space out your learning sessions so that you have time to forget the material, and during your learning session, to keep switching between two topics. Having said this, however, this does not mean that you should try multitasking. It is shown that multitasking could affect the average person's error rate by around 50%. I suggest using real-world examples. This could make uninteresting materials more relevant to your everyday life. For example, if you're learning how to calculate the volume and area of surfaces of objects, you could try working out how much carpet you would need to buy in order to cover your living room floor. The more relevant to your own experience, the more likely you are to remember this learning. At some point in our study, we will all take notes. So taking and reviewing detailed notes from books, videos and other sources can help support your learning. You need to use the 5R process whilst note-taking: record, reduce, recite, reflect and review. After recording the most important points, summarise or reduce them down to a few neat bullet points. Next, try to recite them, saying out loud what you've learned in your own words. Then refer back to your summary notes if necessary. Then reflect on what the content means to you, related to your own life and other areas of knowledge and expertise. Finally, review the information on a regular basis. Always actively read information. This means to be fully in the moment while studying. If you passively read and reread materials, it is unlikely to enter your long-term memory. The more you can engage with the topic, the better. Think about also including images where possible. Our brains respond more readily to pictures than words, and this is known as pictorial superiority effect. Pictures can help jog your memory when it comes to reviewing materials. If you need to learn a lot of material quickly, you may well be tempted to try studying or practicing for hours at a time. However, you do need to remember to take regular breaks. Your brain uses glucose and oxygen as you work, and it requires a huge amount of energy relative to its size. Your brain weighs approximately 3 pounds, and this takes about 20% of your total energy intake to suffice. Recent research suggests that working 90-minute blocks is most effective. If 90 minutes seems too long, you could try shorter sessions. How about maybe working for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, and repeat until you've completed 4 sessions. Then you can take rest for 20 to 30 minutes before starting the cycle again. Remember, everyone is different. There is no universal rule. Experiment and see what works best for you. So that's our topic for today. I hope you found some points of use and interest. For more information on how to develop your own learning strategies, go to amali.com and check out the Success Skills 101 resources within the Learning Hub. Additionally, go to amali.com and subscribe for updates and activities on topics aimed to help us to be more successful. Thank you once again for listening. Keep safe and smile always.